We're going to go ahead and get started. So first, I think what we'll do is go around the table and introduce ourselves. Jim, if you want to start with.
Director with the Legislative Services.
Deanna Owari, Deputy Budget Director with the State Budget Agency.
State Senator Liz Brown, alternate member.
Seth Hinshaw, Majority Fiscal Analyst, Senate.
Alicia Nafziger, Fiscal Analyst, House Republicans.
State Representative Bob Cherry, District 53, alternate.
Ben Tooley, Fiscal Analyst for the House Republicans.
Tim Brown, State Representative, District 41, Chair of Ways and Means.
Ryan Mishler, District 9, North Central Indiana.
David Reynolds, Fiscal Analyst, Senate Republican Caucus.
Jason Dudich, State Budget Director to Governor Holcomb.
Karen Talion, State Senator, District 4.
Susan Preble, Fiscal Analyst for the Senate Democrat
Caucus. State Senator Greg Taylor, representing the west side of Indianapolis, Senate alternate.
State Representative Terry Gooden, today representing Governor Holcomb.
Eric Gonzalez, House Democrat, Fiscal Analyst. State Representative Gregory Porter, alternate.
I think next we'll have Vice Chancellor Wessey, if you want to.
Again, my name is David Wessey. I'm the IPFW Vice Chancellor for Financial and Administrative Affairs. On behalf of current Chancellor Carwine and soon-to-be Chancellor Elsenbaumer, I welcome you to Fort Wayne. We're very pleased to have you here. For IPFW, as you might imagine, it's a year like no other. This year will be remembered as the one when our future began here in Fort Wayne on this campus. Under the realignment plan, IU will increase its focus on health sciences and build on the Indiana University Medical School, which is already on our IPFW campus. Purdue's nursing, medical, imaging, and dental education programs will be transferred to IU, as you know. Purdue will handle all other academic programming and will no longer be the managing partner of the campus for both universities. This idea creates the opportunity for both parts of the former IPFW to grow strong and support the needs of the community. The realignment plan reaffirms both universities' commitment to the Fort Wayne community while focusing on the institution's respective educational strength. IU's focus on health sciences is based on regional demand, and Purdue will conduct an analysis of potential new programs in science, technology, engineering, and math. The plan is designed to create a seamless experience for both IU and Purdue. Students on this campus will share the delivery of services and the use of campus facilities, but they will be distinct institutions. We look forward to this exciting opportunity and to your continued support, which we greatly appreciate. Welcome again to our campus, and we hope you have a successful day. Thank you.
Thank you. The minutes from the last meeting have been distributed. Are there any amendments to the minutes?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? A proposed agenda has been distributed. Are there amendments to the agenda? All right, the agenda is placed on the table for discussion. Then I think we'll go ahead and start with our projects, and the first is the Adjutant General's Office, Brigadier General Ronald Westfall.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well on a fine Friday, especially with the weather we have today. Just a quick introduction. I'm Brigadier General Ron Westfall, as you just heard. I'm the Director of the Joint Staff for the Adjutant General of the state of Indiana. So I'm his primary staff officer that really fills in and any time that the general is not available, which he is out of state today. So first of all, on his behalf and the rest of us, thanks. I appreciate not only what the State Budget Committee provides to us, but also for allowing us the opportunity to come here and talk to you today. Just real quick, you know, we've got a lot going on, and I'm not going to go into all the details. That's not the purpose of today's meeting, but tomorrow I've got an MP company that's going to deploy and head down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Also, I've got the 38th Sustainment Brigade, which is heading to Kuwait here in just about a month. And then I've got soldiers that just returned from Afghanistan for a year-long deployment that are arriving home as I speak. Some of them had just got home in the last week, and we got some more coming home spread out over the next couple of days. So that's just a small portion of everything that we have going on the federal side. So just to keep everybody reminded that we got a lot of soldiers coming and going in harm's way every day. So 2 items on the agenda. I know you've got those in front of you. One is a repurpose, and the other is some of our capital expenditures for renovations and sustainment costs for some of our armories. So is there any questions on either one of those?
All right, thank you.
Good? All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So, next is the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. Kevin Orr.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The Indiana Law Enforcement Academy is a very large complex, but in my world it can be broken down to 3 distinct buildings. The building in the section of the building in discussion today is the 1992 edition that's comprised of about 31,000 square feet of roofing. As part of our management plan for that campus, we identified this as a leaking roof membrane past its life expectancy. This project would put a new 2-ply modified SBS membrane on that. With your approval, we're actually in design now. With your approval, we would actually bid that project in January or February for an April or May start. It's a $600,000 project.
Any questions? All right, next one.
The second project, one of the things that we do not design into prisons very often is elevators. They offer a different type of security risk than we're willing to accept, and they're just not used in our business. In this particular case, the Reception Diagnostic Center in Plainfield, Indiana is a 5-story intake facility where we take in every adult male felon in the state of Indiana, whether he be in for check deception or murder. We categorize him, run medical batteries, a number of all the screening, and then send him back out to the prison where he will serve his sentence or in a proper security classification. In this facility, we do use an elevator to move high security offenders. The most high security offenders are moved in 2 elevators up and down into that facility in the 1991 edition. Also, all of the food is moved up and down one of the elevators as part of the food delivery model for that facility. This $250,000 project refurbishes 2 elevators originally installed in 1991, restores them to a complete new useful life, and brings them up to current code compliance. In this facility, this is the first time in my career I've ever refurbished an elevator. If you work in the government center, that's a yearly thing. So, but this elevator is one these elevators are used regularly and are operationally important.
Any questions? Representative Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. How long do you think this refurbished elevator will last? I mean, I presume it won't have the life cycle of a new...
I ask those same questions, sir. Elevators at this point in my career, there's not a whole lot that surprises me, but I had to ask a lot of questions on elevators. Actually, this will bring them up with the new drives and motors and everything. These have been in use now for 26 years. The new elevators that they're getting with the new motors and drives and controls, it takes all the moving parts out. They're telling me they will far exceed the original equipment. So, and it's far cheaper than installing new elevators, which was the second thing we investigated as we put the project together.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Next is the Indiana State Police, Major Jerry Williams.
Good morning. I'm here on behalf of Superintendent Carter to request your approval for our interior and exterior lighting upgrade project that we have ongoing. Our goal is to take all of the old lighting fixtures that we currently have in our facilities. All pretty much are the original fixtures that were in these buildings when they were built, mostly in the 1960s and 70s. The goal is to work with our partners with DOC as well as Department of Corrections, as well as Brian Renner and his team, DPW, et cetera, to make sure that we obtain the most efficient and cost-effective lighting packages that we can put into these facilities, changing them over to LEDs from the fluorescent systems that we currently use.
Senator Talley.
Thank you. Just wondering, is anybody, when you're doing these kind of changeovers, is anybody looking at like alternative energy sources, solar, anything, any investigation of that?
Absolutely. There's been extensive conversations with ourselves, the budget director and his team, as well as IDOA and their partnership, as well as DOC, to make sure that we are working with all of the utility companies across the state that take care and provide the utility services, to make sure we're capitalizing on any energy savings opportunities with these upgrades to the lighting packages. We expect to see a savings with this, or realize a savings very quickly once we get each of these facilities up and running.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Department of Natural Resources, Mike Smith.
Good morning, everyone. The Division of Fish and Wildlife is requesting $42,000 of general fund dollars to match approximately $128,000 of federal dollars to renovate the office at Crosley Fish and Wildlife area located in Jennings County. The building was originally built in 1959. Renovations include gutting interior walls and updating electrical and plumbing to meet OSHA standards and become ADA compliant. A total of 1,500 square feet will be remodeled, 600 of which will be converting a porch to a more efficient office space. The new design will provide much needed space for public interaction. The Fish and Wildlife Division collects almost $20 million in hunting and fishing license sales annually.
Any questions for Mike?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Porter.
Thank you much, Mr. Chairman. Quick question. So who does these renovations? Is it done within the state, or is it contracted out? And how do you choose who's going to do the work?
It is contracted out. We go through the Public Works Division of the Department of Administration, and they help us solicit that work and award a candidate.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Next is Logansport State Hospital, Jeff Babb.
Thank you. First, we're requesting replacement of all the lighting at Logansport State Hospital. We have about 2,600 T12 light fixtures, which have been discontinued years ago. I've been surviving on DOC's leftover bulbs for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's time we need to change it out. Switching to LED, we should save approximately $100,000 a year on our energy bill.
Senator Talley.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked your previous person here. When you look at these programs of replacing, I mean, that's a lot of light fixtures. Is anybody considering alternative energy sources? Is anybody considering solar powered anything?
We looked at that, but this covers about 25 different buildings, and it just wasn't cost effective. There would be no cost savings by the time we instituted everything.
Representative Gooden. Mr. Chairman, just a comment. Wouldn't it behoove the state for every agency and every state-owned facility to switch to an LED bulb? I know the returns would be far outweigh the cost of the implementation of that. And I think it probably should be directed at maybe out of the governor's office. That should be something that should be done. There should be no more fluorescent or incandescent bulbs purchased by the state of Indiana. They should all be LED. Pretty simple. I mean, if we're talking $100,000 for what agency, and how many agencies do we have? I think it's a no-brainer.
Fair question.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Just part.
Next project, pardon yourself.
Second project, we're asking to replace the centralized steam plant at Logansport State Hospital. It's been in operation for 50-plus years. I think somebody put 1888, but that's a little old for this building. The facility was built in 1888. At one time, we had about 50 buildings, 1.6 million square feet. We're down to under 600,000 square feet. It's just not energy efficient to run these systems. By switching to independent boilers at the buildings, we can eliminate tunnels, we can eliminate steam lines, and many of the leaks and many of the repairs we have. We do see an annual savings just by the reduction of staff in that building.
Representative Brown?
Yes, thank you, Jeff, and thank you for showing us yesterday the steam plant. And so this cost also means putting in the independent units per building also?
This entire cost is to put in these units.
I'm sorry, say?
This entire cost is to put in these units, boilers, hot water heaters, water softeners.
Senator Taylor?
You said that the decentralized campus will save Logansport more than $260,000 a year. Does that mean there's gonna be job cuts based from this?
We think there will be job cuts.
Okay. Is there any concept of what we're gonna do with those employees once, I mean, are they state employees?
I'd like to do it through attrition, bring them into the maintenance department to figure out how we're gonna operate all these various boilers, hot water heaters, and then make a determination.
Okay, and how many jobs are we talking about here?
There's 6 employees in this plant.
There's only 6?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then same question as Representative Porter asked, is this bid through Department of Administration as well?
Every project goes through the Department of Administration.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, if you want to move on to the Richmond.
Yes, we have a very similar project at Richmond State Hospital. It's the same situation, basically same cost savings.
Any questions? All right, thanks, Jeff.
Everyone that was able to make it to Logansport yesterday, we truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Next, we have School for the Deaf, Adam Irvin.
Hello. Indiana School for Deaf is requesting $750,000 to replace the HVAC units in our CTE building. The building was approximately 45,300 combined square feet between the north side and the south side. The north side was built in 1966 and the south end was built in 1977. The building has been used for student education since it's opened. There has been no recent renovations to the building, and the HVAC units are 40 years old. We're constantly going through breakdowns, so it's a good time to get them replaced. In addition, the damage to the units was done back in 2014 during a winter storm when we lost power. And in the north side of the building was already been renovated back in 2016. Any questions?
Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is your capacity on the campus of the school, and what is your enrollment right now?
Don't know the exact numbers, but we have approximately 200 and some students.
Are they residents or day students?
We have some residents. It's a small percentage. I don't know the exact percentage of students who stay overnight, but majority of them bust in every day. I can get you that figure if you want, but I can't tell you how many residents there is.
So you don't know if you're at capacity or not?
No.
No, okay.
Well, we're not at full capacity. I mean, we're very minimum.
So how many buildings do you have on campus?
There's approximately around 12 buildings,
Okay, of those 12 buildings, how many are you actively using?
all of them, except for one that's been shut down since the 80s.
So 200 students are using 12 buildings?
We have elementary, from kindergarten all the way to high school. We have, administrative buildings, maintenance buildings.
Well, maybe a better question would be, how many total square feet do you have on campus, and how many total square feet are you using?
Well, I don't have that figure with me. We're using every building. There is sections that are shut down. In this, well, the next project I was going to go over is the section is shut down due to it don't have no heat or cooling in it. But I can get you those figures.
I'm
if
just
you want.
curious. If you could, please, that would
Yes.
be great. Senator Taylor?
Just so I get, is this the, over by the State Fairground?
Yes.
Okay, so it's in my district. So, kind of going back to what was talked, why do you need extra square footage for so few students? Can you explain the difference of why the deaf school might need that space rather than a regular school? I mean, if you look at the percentage of square footage for a school, but I know there's a difference because it's deaf students.
Yes. We're trying not to add any more space. We're just trying to renovate what's there.
Okay. Is there any discussions with the State Fair about any of those buildings? State Fair?
As far as what?
Acquisition, utilization, anything like that? Okay.
No, not that I know of. Okay. We work closely with the state fairgrounds, especially during the state fair. They utilize the campus for parking, and that's about it. But okay. We do work closely with state fairgrounds.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If you could get us those square footage numbers, that'd be helpful.
Yes, I could.
So, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Taylor, your question's appropriate. I think the age of both, not only the School for the Deaf, but the School for the Blind, in terms of when the buildings were built and the purpose of those buildings, has probably not changed with the number of students and the purpose of the school that it is today and what we would see in most school corporations. I think it's a fair question as to the footprint that both the School for the Blind and School for the Deaf have today, and if that's appropriate for the number of students, whether they're living there or being bused in. There's been some discussion over several years about what the future of the School for the Deaf and School for the Blind and Visually Impaired is moving forward, and I think these are good questions in terms of the overall square footage and space that's the School for the Deaf and School for the Blind use, if it's appropriate, if it needs to be changed, if there's opportunities for consolidation or even other campus sites in the future. So these are fair questions. I think we need to get those answers to you relatively quickly, especially based on the questions that both you and the senator have had on School for the Deaf.
Yeah, the only thing I would encourage whoever controls that situation is to remember that my district has a lot of exempt property, and this is one of them. It's a huge square foot in that area, and it's a huge footprint in that area, and just speaking from my standpoint, I'd like to see some utilization that produces some kind of tax revenue for the city and the community in that area. I can just tell you, representing it, that that area has been void of any investment in a long time, and I think it's time for us to, as a state, to encourage that kind of development in the area.
Any other questions? Do you want to address your second project there?
Yes, sir. The next project is HVAC replacement for Building 3, $112,943. Building 3 was constructed in 1971 and has approximately 5,265 square feet. There has been no renovations to the building since it's opened. Steam lines to heat the building come underneath the concrete slab, and due to some leaks that we've had to bust up some concrete to make repairs. In order to address this issue, the scope of work includes capping off the abandoned steam lines that run through the building and replacing with new HVAC units to supply heat and cooling to the building. Any questions?
Any questions? Director Dudich?
Adam, what is Building 3 used for?
Building 3 is right now, Building 3 is not being used due to the heat and cooling being off due to these issues, but it's connected to the elementary side of the school, and it contained classrooms and some administrative offices.
And those current functions are being housed in another part of the facility?
Yes, they moved them to a different part of the facility temporarily until we can get this section of the building back up and running.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Talley?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment about this, and I will preface it by saying that I haven't been to this facility for many years, so I don't know what your current space, building uses are, but it sounds to me like we all have some questions about how much space you have, how many buildings you have, and what the utilization is, and yet we're being asked to spend almost $1 million on repairs when I feel like we don't really know what the status of the whole project is. So I wish we could kind of look at your whole big picture.
Okay.
And see what it is that we're doing.
Okay. Well, right now, we're just trying to repair old HVAC systems that have been breaking down and deteriorating. But we can give you a bigger scope of what we're looking at in the future, and
So
kind of give you.
The kids that, the elementary, the usage that Building 3 used to have, what's it being used? Where are those programs at?
They just moved them into other areas, wherever they could fit them, and empty classrooms or empty administrative offices throughout the campus.
So I guess my question is then, do you still need Building 3, or can you go with the fact that they've moved those programs into empty spaces?
Well, we'd like to utilize that space again. That could give us more opportunities to expand in the other areas also, as far as new, staffing offices or even additional classrooms. It's taking up space that we could future expand on.
Senator Taylor.
I don't want to give the wrong conclusion to the committee, but this is part of my district, and I'm concerned about some of the discussions that are going on because I haven't been, and Representative Porter, I think, represents part of that area as well. And as far as I know, we haven't been part of any discussions what's going on. I would think that it would be only prudent for us, including the Budget Committee, to have something to look at this prior to making any decisions. And if there are discussions going on, I'd like to be included in it. Just wanted to make a point of clarification. This is my district, and I want to make sure that if whatever happens over there benefits the community.
Representative Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Taylor. Just want to reiterate some of the things Senator Taylor said. However, I did and have served on the board of the School for the Deaf as a legislative liaison. Being in the minority now, I have not been on that board or had any real conversations in the last 6 years or so. However, I am very familiar with said property. I go there at least 2 or 3 times a year for events through, and the census is from my perspective, is still a good census. It wasn't what it was 20 years ago, however, it's still a good census. And the activities over there for the deaf community or hearing impaired community is very valuable. There are a lot of activities in regards to families and educational initiatives within the deaf community and our hearing impaired community, correct myself. And I know in the last 3 or 4 years, or maybe 5 years, there has been a lot of extensive discussion in regards to American Sign Language as well as cochlear implants. And those other programs or initiatives to outsource some of the programs for the hearing impaired. So I think this whole conversation, it is relevant. And as Mr. Jason has said before, it's been going on, I've been around for a while, it's been going for at least 10 years, at least. And I think, and it goes back to way back, Mr. Chairman, when Senator Lubbers was, Commissioner Lubbers, Senator Lubbers was on the blind school liaison. I was at the deaf school liaison. And so this conversation has been going on for a while. And I will make my end statement by saying it is a territory that is very precarious from those community, and we have to understand we're dealing with the hearing impaired community and the visually impaired community, and whatever we do, we need to be extremely cognizant of those two communities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things I want to know. One, of both of these projects, especially on item 10, we did have the Budget Committee review a similar project for the CTE building last year in order to ensure that was properly taken care of. The other is with the School for the Blind. We had a project or two last month that we discussed in terms of maintaining those facilities, and I want to keep that in mind, regardless of what happens in the discussion, which I agree with Representative Porter and Senator Taylor that there needs to be a discussion based on what I'm hearing today about the needs, the space, the number of students. I was unaware that a majority of students are bused into the School for the Deaf. That was news to me. But I want to be sure we're also cognizant that these are still state assets. They need to be maintained, and we need to take a very hard look at if there is going to be something in the future for the School for the Deaf or the School for the Blind, that we think about the assets that are there. If we decide to not take care of those assets now or in the future, those assets will diminish. There are students that are there on campus, and we need to make sure that those state assets are managed and maintained properly. So some of this is bringing up very good questions about the future of those schools and the enrollment and where those students are coming from. But again, we're also talking about a state asset that needs to be maintained and needs to be taken care of, whether or not we're there in 5 or 6 or 7 years or somebody else is there. Senator Taylor's point about taxable property. So I also want to just have the committee keep that in mind, that maintaining those facilities is also an important part of the state's role and making sure those facilities are adequate for the students there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Natalia?
This is off point. I just received a text message from somebody from the press saying that the web, are we being web streamed? They're not getting it. Something's wrong, they're not getting it. Do you know if everything's going? Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next up is item number 12, Department of Transportation, Steve McAvoy.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. NDOT has 3 projects on the agenda this morning. Our first project is the construction of the Oakland City Unit Building and Salt Building. We formally request funding in the amount of $4,200,000 for the construction of a 6,693 square foot unit building and a 3,600 ton capacity salt building. The new unit building will replace the existing 2,000 square foot Petersburg unit building that was built in 1930, and the new salt building will replace the existing 667 ton capacity Petersburg salt building. Both buildings will be constructed on a new site in Oakland City, Indiana. The existing unit building does not allow for OSHA-approved work clearances or proper ventilation in the garage. In addition, the age and condition of the structure has contributed to other operational environmental issues such as ADA accessibility, the inability to wash trucks inside the building with containment, site drainage, and stormwater runoff issues. The existing salt building does not allow for salt to be offloaded or loaded within the building and out of the weather. Offloading and loading of salt outside in winter weather is unsafe and also contributes to salt contamination. Construction of the new unit building and salt building will mitigate all these concerns while keeping in line with the current industry standards of pricing for similar NDOT unit and salt buildings. The projects will be ready to bid in December of this year, and upon completion of the new buildings, the existing Petersburg unit site will be sold.
Any questions? Before you move on, it is streaming. However, maybe we need to speak into the microphones a little better. Maybe that's part of the problem. I'm not sure, but it is streaming, so maybe just concentrate on speaking into the microphones. Thank you. I'm sorry. Any questions?
All right. Okay, our next project is the construction of an equipment storage building at our existing Elkhart unit site. This is, we request funding in the amount of $275,000 for the construction of a 3,500 square foot equipment storage building. Currently, there is no on-site dedicated equipment storage at this location. Mowers and small equipment have been stored in a unit garage bay or off-site. The construction of this equipment storage building will deter theft and increase productivity by keeping the equipment on site and out of the weather. The estimated $79 a square foot cost is in line with prior constructed equipment storage buildings.
Any questions? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Steve. Mine. Long-term, is mowing subcontracted out, or, I mean, how much mowing do you do at the different areas?
Well, you know, in facilities, I don't manage the mowing contracts. That's our highway maintenance department. I have limited knowledge on that. I would say a lot of it is contracted out. I can definitely get you that information, though, by talking to our maintenance department.
I guess just a comment, maybe as we delve into new technology, maybe there's a Uber app for contracting out mowing services along highways.
Right.
And so we can kind of eBay services type things. So.
Right.
Senator Tallien.
Thank you. Steve, when you get rid of that facility in Petersburg,
Right.
do you have to do, is there like a site cleanup that you have to do because it was salt? What do you have to do?
Well, before we dispose of any property, we do a Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental assessment. Normally, the contamination on our sites is due to petroleum when we used to store fuel tanks. Salt contamination is not regulated, but we have had problems in the past, especially in Valparaiso with, groundwater contamination. So we're real cognizant of those issues. That's why we try to build new salt buildings where we can contain all of the salt under roof to try to mitigate those concerns.
Okay, but do you anticipate anything?
No, not at this site, no.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brown?
I'm just curious, I think I just heard you say you contract out for mowing and everything, so why do you need storage units for mowers?
Well, these aren't for the mowers for the interstate. These are the mowers for the facilities location. Also, they need an area that they can store small equipment such as chainsaws, weed whips.
So the particular unit doesn't contract out the mowing, but they mow around their own facilities, so we need a storage unit for the mowers
Right,
to
this
mow
is
around their own facility.
correct. This is just equipment that they would.
Has anyone contemplated just extending the contract from the highway to mow around the facility?
I would have to talk to maintenance about that.
Senator Taylor? Oh, okay. Just like looking at it, is that it? Okay. All right, any questions? All right, next project.
Our last project is also an equipment storage building. This is a $275,000 request. Again, 3,500 square foot equipment storage building. This would be located at our brand new Plymouth subdistrict. This new subdistrict facility was just accepted and occupied on October 10th. So the only facilities on this location currently are the subdistrict building and the salt building. We need some type of equipment storage. Again, it would house equipment to be used on site with the facility, deter theft. We've had quite a lot of theft at some facilities throughout the state, and increase productivity by keeping it out of the weather. Again, $79 a square foot is what we anticipate.
Oh, Senator Talley.
The Plymouth facility's brand new?
Brand new.
Well, why didn't you build the storage equipment at the same time?
Well, we could have, but when the sub-district project was planned, we had only so much money allocated for it. We used every bit of it to build the sub-district and the salt building at that time.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Indiana Veterans Home. Deb?
Good morning. My name's Dave Conwell, Maintenance Supervisor.
My name's Deb Burge, the Maintenance Director.
First thing I'd like to say is last time I was in front of you, you guys approved a pile project for flooring. I want to say thank you. The residents are very excited as Phase 1, or the second floor, was completed yesterday. They're moving into their new rooms over the last week, and the excitement on their face on seeing their new rehabbed rooms is astounding. Also, I'd like to invite any of you to come anytime you'd like to visit and actually see the improvements that we are making at the Veterans Home with your help. Today we are here on behalf of a chiller repair. We actually have 4 buildings that are controlled by 3 different chillers. These chillers over the past 3-4 years have cost us money, and we've had experts come in such as Train and J&L Mechanical, and actually have told us that these chillers are 19-20 years old. The compressors, which one compressor is almost $35,000, you're talking about 3 chillers having a total of 16 compressors. So they're at the age where we now need to start refurbishing them, and rehabbing them. So we're asking today for $350,000 to repair and to help our chiller program, or chillers, to actually be able to work at more efficient, and also the long term would be 7 to 8 years, saving us money from repair after repair.
I just want to add that one chiller would cost $350,000 to put in a new chiller. We're asking for $350,000 to do 3 more chillers as the renewal project for the Indiana Veterans Home. Like Dave said, compressors cost $35,000. Some chillers have 4 compressors, so those will all be new parts, which will help a lot.
We are going to receive a 2-year parts and warranty on the work that is done, and they're saying that the current, with all of our refurbishing that we do with our chillers, should give us another lifespan of 8 to 10 years.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the university projects. We have Indiana State, Diane Key.
Thank you, Chairman Mishler and members of the Budget Committee. Indiana State University requests approval to proceed with the renovation of Hallman Center. Built in 1973 as a multi-purpose facility, Hallman Center serves as a venue for student convocations, commencement, speaker series, performing arts, athletic events, and a variety of community activities. Academic programs that utilize the facility include athletic training, sports management, and communications through a student-led ESPN3 network. All of these provide real-world learning opportunities for our students. In 2015, the Indiana General Assembly appropriated $37.5 million in fee-replaced funding for the renovation of the facility, with an anticipated match from local government sources to allow for a conference center expansion. Unfortunately, we have been unable to secure that match, but also recognize the urgent need to move forward to renovate a 45-year-old structure that is critical to Indiana State and Terre Haute. Recognizing this need, the Indiana State University Board of Trustees requests release of the $37.5 million designated for the renovation of Hallman Center to address the infrastructure of the facility in terms of mechanical systems, electrical systems, exterior envelope, and life safety. The total project cost of $50 million is anticipated and is to be financed through the issuance of $37.5 million of fee-replaced debt as appropriated by the General Assembly, gifts received, capital reserves, and non-fee replaced borrowing. A conference facility could be added at a future time when local funding is secured. President Bradley has accompanied me here today, and we would be happy to answer any questions you may have concerning the project.
Any questions? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Diane, and just want to thank President Bradley for all his hard work here, and hard work for the state of Indiana, and thank you for your patience in talking and working through this project.
Thanks to all the members of the Budget Committee and the fiscal analyst. It's been, working through this with you has been very helpful, and we very much appreciate your consideration of this.
Thank you. Next, Indiana University, Dr. Tom Morrison.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Indiana University has 2 projects for you today, one very large and one somewhat relatively smaller. The first one is on our Bloomington campus, and when I say large, it is probably one of the largest projects, if not the largest projects, ever to occur at a public university in the state of Indiana. Overall, it is a $400 million project that encompasses a new regional academic health center to be built on our campus in Bloomington in conjunction with IU Health and IU Health Bloomington Hospital. Several years ago, as IU Health Bloomington Hospital became more of a regional health hub for an 11-county region in southwest central Indiana. It became obvious that their existing hospital just south of Bloomington was not adequate for their needs, and they began looking for other sites to build a totally new hospital. We partnered with our colleagues at IU Health and figured out that leveraging the power of the hospital as well as Indiana University and our programs in medicine, nursing, speech and hearing, social work, and public health could be an enormous win for that part of the state. We are proposing today to you to relocate and build a new hospital complex on the campus on what is currently the driving range of the golf course. As you know, I was last before you talking about a renovation of the golf course. This project somewhat necessitated that. The project would include all the spaces that you would normally expect in a hospital: emergency room, surgery, outpatient clinics, hospital bed tower, but also connected to it will be an academic health sciences building, and that's specifically what is one of the main component that I'm asking for your approval today. That academic health sciences building that'll be connected to the hospital complex will allow us to place in it the academic programs for the medical education center, medical education, doctors, School of Nursing, School of Public Health, School of Speech and Hearing, and social work, and to move all of those units and to allow them to grow in conjunction with the hospital complex. That piece of the project is $45 million, be funded by certificates of participation through the IU Building Corporation and a mechanism that we've presented to you often. The funding for that, the leases, the payments will be paid back by university funds. Specifically, this will be refunded by revenues from our Big Ten television network contract. President McRobbie has been very committed to utilize those funds, although they are generated by athletic programs, to utilize those funds for academic purposes. And this will be the second major capital project that we have done utilizing the Big Ten revenue. I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. The building itself is $45 million, 115,000 square feet. The overall complex, as I said, is about $400 million. Construction scheduled to start in January, and pending your approval. And we will be entering into a long-term lease with IU Health for the land where the driving range is today for the hospital complex. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Representative Gooden?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the contract with your partners, does it extend the life of the construction cost bond or the other forms that you're paying for that, or is that your IU Health participation and those folks that are going to be partnering with you, is their commitment the same as the life of the bonds, the cost of the project?
It's longer. So the relationship with IU Health for the lease of the property is 99 years. Our lease on just building our building is 25 years.
Thank you. And no, I'm not going to ask that question. But just, can you describe to us the sort of the timeline for the various parts of this project?
Sure.
Yeah, which buildings are going up first?
Sure. The entire complex will start, and it really is being designed and built as a joint complex. So while I say there's an academic health sciences building, it's all part of one interconnected complex. And so it is anticipated to be started at the same time and finished at roughly the same time. So we will propose to start construction in early January of 2018 and be completed with the entire complex by the end of 2020. We are hoping, though, that the academic health sciences building will complete in mid-2020 so that we can hit an academic year. So we'll finish the academic health sciences building a little ahead of the hospital. As you might imagine, the hospital build is longer, more complex, and so that will take a little bit longer.
So all of these are going on concurrently?
That is correct.
Okay.
It'll be an enormous construction, it'll be the largest construction project ever done in Monroe County.
Wow.
Tom, one question may not be fair to ask you, but if you could get the answer back, if you can't answer, that'd be great. Why are you guys using certificates of participation rather than the traditional bond financing? I find that unique that IU uses a lot of certificates of participation versus what we are, you know, is it cheaper? And if it is, I'm not aware of, but yeah.
It's not cheaper, and this is Senator Tallien's normal question. It's good you to ask it for her.
Yeah, I don't understand why you guys keep doing them if they're not cheaper.
No, I'm happy to explain,
right.
and this is a very, very common question. And my colleagues at Purdue utilize a similar mechanism. The reason that we do is because state statute doesn't allow public universities to bond projects, particularly for academic buildings, without going through full approval of the General Assembly. And so about a decade ago, we proposed to the Budget Committee this new mechanism of utilizing certificates of participation in the IU Building Corporation as a means by which we could act more swiftly, still getting the approval of all that we would need to get between the Commission for Higher Education and this body, but allowed us to move more quickly. And so it's the reason we do it is because the state statute doesn't allow us to do it another way. We would be certainly open to changing that, but until then, we think we have a mechanism. I would tell you that it is slightly more expensive to do it this way.
So, for convenience of time, you're spending more money.
That's correct, and time is, if you could imagine, you know, we would be about, from this point, we would be about another year and a half out.
But that doesn't, in the bond market, that doesn't matter. It's based on the market. So, you know, you could actually save money on the financing if you go a year later. But that's neither here nor there. The second question would be the 350 million that IU Health is going to spend. How are you guys are part of it? What's your obligation on that?
We are not obligated to that in any way. Good question, Senator Taylor. One of the questions of members of the committee has been, what's the separation between you and IU Health? Corporately, we are separate bodies. Of course, we're related, but we are separate bodies. And so IU Health, their portion of that facility, that $350 million spend, will be completely theirs. And one of those related questions we've been asked is, well, what happens if, for whatever reason, IU Health does not move forward with their part of the project? Then we wouldn't be moving forward with ours. It's all linked.
That's really my question would be not whether or not IU Health moves forward with their project, but IU Health being an entity that we don't have any say-so on how they finance. They could sell the facility. They could do a lot of things with the facility that we don't control. I just want to make sure that we've got some kind of obligation in that lease deal, that the lease for 99 years, regardless of how they could not be doing the management.
That is correct, and those are all terms that we do have negotiated in the lease between the trustees and IU Health.
Great, thank you.
Senator Brown.
Mr. Chairman, so getting back to the funding mechanism, you're using the Big Ten TV contract, and have you first already paid off the first project? And secondly, what are the revenues on that contract? And is it for the length of the lease that you're or the length of this project? In other words, can you guarantee the payments to cover this project from
Correct.
the TV contract?
Common question. The television contract with the Big Ten, normally those go in 6 to 10 year increments, and so those would be shorter than the life of the bonds, which are 20 to 25 years. The other project that we did with those bonds is now about 5 years old, but in that amount of time, the revenues from the Big Ten have just about doubled, and so so far that is proving to be a good investment for us. The question, completely valid, is what if in the future television revenues go away and that all collapses? then it would be university general funds. Interest income would be our next call of action on those to pay back that debt.
Okay, so you haven't finished paying for the first project?
No.
And-
Because it's a bonded project.
Right, but, so with now 2 projects, what's the revenues, and is there any extra revenue anticipated, at least in the short term of 6 to 10, beyond funding these?
Yes. The commitment of Big Ten revenues for these projects is about 1/3 of our Big Ten revenues. So there's still 2/3 left.
And is the number proprietary? What is the amount?
I believe it is, I believe it's just short of $40 million a year.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Has the term certificate of participation only been used in that prior Big Ten project funding?
The prior Big Ten funded project was the certificates of participation project.
Are there other times that the term certificate of participation has been used in other revenue streams?
Yes, and more often they are not Big Ten revenue projects. I believe we've done 10 or 12 COPS projects, and typically those are either funded by athletic revenues, all revenues if they're athletic projects. If they are university projects, they're refunded by university general funds. Interest income is the primary source.
Which brings me, when you build your budget and you look at your annual budget to the Board of Trustees, isn't interest income part of the revenue stream that you put against expense?
Yes.
And so therefore, are you robbing from your revenue stream?
No, it's part of the budget building process, and part of that debt, or what we use that money for, is in university priority projects, whether they be capital or other investments in research and other things.
Okay. As we look at the Indiana University Building Corporation, on your consolidated financial statement, is that liability on the consolidated statement?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure.
Okay. Who has the oversight of the construction project? Is it IU Health or is it IU University?
IU Health will act as the overall agent for construction of the entire project. 90% of the project is theirs. It makes sense to have them administrate that, but we are a key player in that.
Okay. As we look at the timing of this, is there any particular reason? I mean, a $400 million project, you know, doesn't necessarily in 6 or 9 months happen. Why did this not go through CHE and the budget cycle?
The initial approval by the Board of Trustees occurred back in February of this year, and so now it has made its way through the cycle through now. So we would.
But I'm sure there were talks of a $400 million project way before that.
Sure, but in terms of putting all the elements together where we could go forth just like to this body and make sure we had all the elements that we could give you sure answers with all the components. It wasn't until, yes, this discussion's been going on for about 5 years. But until we were ready to say this is exactly how we're going to do it, wasn't until February of last year.
Thank you.
Representative Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Tom, for being here. You're looking at $40 million per year from Big Ten contract, and you're using 1/3 of it. And
On total capital.
Total capital. So of that $40 million, so the rest of it is building up a foundation, or what?
Rest of it is budgeted. A lot of it is budgeted within athletic revenues. It's used by athletics for everything from scholarships to other expenses.
And in regards to the new hospital, you guys are partners, but IU will, Indiana University Health will do the building design of it.
Correct.
Do you know how many beds is going to be in the new hospital?
I do not. I want to say 200, just in the bed portion.
All Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Next project?
Next project on the IUPUI campus is a renovation of parking garages on the IUPUI campus to include lighting upgrades in several garages, as well as foundational repairs in the University Tower garage, which many of you remember the old University Hotel on the IUPUI campus, that there's a parking garage below that hotel. That parking garage is in need of foundational upgrades. It is below grade. As you know, in Indiana, we don't have a lot of below grade parking garages. And this is one that needs repair due to water infiltration. On the remainder of the garages, we will replace all light fixtures with new LED fixtures, similar to other projects you've heard this morning, and fire alarm replacement. And total costs across the IUPUI campus is $5.3 million to be funded by parking funds. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Representative Brown.
Sorry, I made me think, going back to the prior project, does this build in the R&R costs going forward on the $45 million project?
It will be included in your current formula for R&R.
No, will your bonding take care of it so we don't have to pay for it going forward?
I would claim that our university funds will take care of about 3/4 of it. The way the formula currently works, the state of Indiana funds about 25% of the R&R formula.
These are not bonds. They're not using bonds. There you go.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Next is Purdue, Tony Hahn.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I am Tony Hahn from Purdue University, and again, welcome to the IPFW campus. We're very happy to have you here today. I have 6 projects for your consideration. First is we could approve them en masse if that would be better. First is the Agricultural and Biological Engineering Building Renovation and Addition. If this looks familiar, this was our #1 priority request in this last year's biennial budget. The Ag and Biological Engineering program is our undergraduate program is rated #1 in the country for 8 straight years. This will create a new facility of 125,000 square feet and renovate an additional 37,000 square feet that will create a much more modern laboratory space for ag and biological engineering and have high bay lab space. This is the engineering department that uses tractors, combines, and very large equipment. They are currently spread over 10 different facilities on campus, and this would consolidate the academic and the teaching and lab space into one place. The total cost of this budget is the total cost of this project is $80 million. $69 million from student fee bonds from the budget. The other $11 million from fundraising. That's a project ongoing right now. The original Ag and Biological Engineering building was started in 1928. There was an addition in 1940 and another in 1950. That's the most recent addition to the building. We'll be reusing most of that space, but the new addition then will be mostly the labs. Any questions about Ag and Biological Engineering?
Any questions?
So how are you financing your deal here?
Of the $80 million for the project, 69 are student fee bonds from the fee replacement from the state budget.
Are you using certificates?
No, this is a traditional bonding mechanism.
Okay.
And I can say that none of my projects today are COPS, certificates of participations. While we have utilized them in the past for mostly athletic projects, none of mine today are.
Okay. Why not?
The 2 that have bonding authority today came from the state budget. So that gives us the authority to issue fee-replaced student bonds, and so we do.
Okay. And All right, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, next.
The next project is the Bioscience Innovation Building. This will be a transformative project at the Purdue Northwest Hammond campus. If this looks familiar, it has been on our list of requests for more than a decade. It at one time was called Emerging Technology Building. In the 2015 budget, you appropriated $2.4 million in cash for planning, which has been ongoing since then. This was on our priority request list this past budget. This will construct a 68,000 square foot new facility that will be the home to the College of Nursing, one of our most popular programs at the Northwest campus and in high demand in the Northwest region of this state, as well as the Department of Biological Sciences. It currently is the nursing program is currently pieced together across campus. It was housed in the Geit Annex, which was given to us from the Inland Steel Company, a 1953 building, part of which has been closed because of groundwater intrusion, plumbing problems, heating and cooling concerns. So part of this project is to demolish that. This 1953 building was not intended to be a classroom space, and it's at the end of its useful life. It'll also reduce our R&R for that campus significantly by demolishing that building. The type of programs that will take place in this building are very important to that region of the state. This will, I think, be, again, transformative to that campus. This project is $40.5 million, $35.1 million from student fee proceeds, the bonding authority from the state budget. $2.4 million was the cash appropriation from the 2015 budget. That's been previously received and the planning process started. We anticipate gift funds of $2 million, and we're spending central reserves from our general fund of $1 million for the contribution to $40.5 million. Any questions about the Bioscience Innovation Building at the Northwest Campus, Hammond?
Senator Taylor, or Senator Talion. Just used to saying Senator Taylor, sorry.
I just want to say that for as long as I have been in the legislature, I have been hearing, can you help us with this building? Northwest Indiana thanks you that we get this project done, finally.
And we thank you for your support for that for years.
Any other questions? All right, next project.
The next project, this will also sound familiar as this is phase 7 of the University Residence Bathroom Renovation, Earhart Hall. This is the 7th of 9 planned phases to our H halls. If you've been to our campus, you know that of our 15 resident halls, most of them are large 8-story H halls with wings on each side. This is the 7th time we've done this, but over the course of a summer, we take one tower and we renovate all 8 floors of the bathrooms in that one column. This will be the east tower of the Earhart Resident Hall. It replaces aging plumbing that was constructed in 1964, so just for relative nature. The plumbing hasn't been changed since 1964, and there are 52 students per floor, so I think it may well be at the end of its useful life. The renovation will provide new electrical and plumbing and exhaust, serve a slightly larger restroom that is configured for greater privacy and consistent with student expectations, and also align it with ADA considerations. Total cost is $4.9 million, and like the other resident hall project, these funds come from the auxiliary services, the fees that the students pay to live in these facilities. We set aside some for repair and rehabilitation. Any questions about the Earhart bathroom project?
All right, next.
Another bathroom project. This would be phase 1 of 4 in Hillenbrand Hall. This will replace the original plumbing and sewer infrastructure and will necessitate the demolition of some bathrooms. There'll be 65 bathrooms affected by this. Hillenbrand was our first resident hall that utilized a suite type room approach where you have multiple living rooms that share a bathroom in a suite model. So there'll be 65 bathrooms affected. There'll be new plumbing, new vents. new finishes. The total cost of this project is $2.3 million and also funded from that auxiliary services from the fees paid by the students to live there. We set aside that money for R&R.
All right, next project.
Next project is the Heine Pharmacy Building, student collaboration and study space renovation. The Heine Pharmacy Building is the home to our pharmacy department. The new building that just opened on campus, which I want to mention was a 2013 budget appropriation, the Wilmeth Active Learning Center, revolutionary new 125,000 square feet, all classroom building. We consolidated many departmental and college libraries into that collaborative space, and so that makes room within the colleges for the libraries that moved out. This will take about 6,500 assignable square feet of the old pharmacy library on the second and third floor and turn that into additional study and collaboration space for students. The Heine Pharmacy Building was constructed in the late 1960s where collaborative student space was not a focus of the design. They will also make renovations to bring it up to code with ADA standards. There's mechanical and HVAC equipment that has to be upgraded as well. Total cost of this project will be $2.1 million, and it will be funded from our central general fund that includes the student R&R fee that is charged to the students on the West Lafayette campus. It's consistent with our R&R plan for the year. Any questions about the Heine Pharmacy Building project?
Representative Brown?
Yeah, thank you, Tony. And we have under this that university funds and can be some different sources. Is this R&R money from, that we talk about the F&A Facilities Administration of Grants portion to help with the renovation in spaces like this? Is that this silo or bucket?
Well, that's an excellent question and one that we've come back to a couple times. The terminology that's used there is general fund, and there's many things, revenue streams that feed into that. Indirect, at least in the Purdue system, the indirect cost recovery from grants does feed into our general fund, as well as the student R&R fee, interest income, and other revenue sources. We budget it then in buckets out of that, and this would be, this is more consistent with our, because it was library space and not research space, consistent with our student R&R fee that generates about $12.7 million a year for our R&R program.
Any questions? All right, next project.
Final project is the Stewart Center HVAC renovation. The Stewart Center is one of our largest buildings on the West Lafayette campus. Also serves one of our existing libraries. The Stewart Center was started in 1911, renovations in 1933, 1954, and most recently in 1959. We need to modernize and improve some of the air handling capacity and the quality of the air handling in the Stewart Center, as well as create some redundancy in the chilled and hot water, as well as some of the other air handling. Total cost of this project is estimated at $3.4 million and will be done over time in a phased approach since the building and library will always be occupied during this time. Of the $3.4 million, we have allocated $2.59 million from the state R&R appropriation and the balance from our general fund, as was discussed in the last. Any questions about the Stewart Center HVAC renovation?
All right, thanks. Representative Porter.
I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Tony. We had discussion with Indiana University in regards to the Big Ten network and their revenues.
Yeah.
Is any of those revenues going to be implemented in any of this 9 projects that we have in front of us? And also, are you aware of what your Big Ten revenue resources are?
The answer to your first question is no. We do not plan to dedicate any Big Ten revenues to any of the 6 projects you heard today. And much like Dr. Morrison's answer, our revenue share from the Big Ten, I believe, is between 36 and 38 million. And that's a new contract that incorporates the new Rutgers and Maryland edition, and so that's fairly new.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Next, we have the review items. Number one is Gigapop. Dave Gent.
Good morning, I'm Dave Gent with Indiana University. I've got a couple of projects to talk about this morning. The first is the Indiana Gigapop. The Gigapop is essentially an entity managed by Indiana University that buys access to the national research networks, Energy Sciences Network, the NOAA Network, NASA, Internet 2. What we do then is distribute those resources back to universities in Indiana and to the iLight network, which I'll talk about in just a second. These are resources that typically universities can't or wouldn't buy on their own. The commitment of cost, level of connectivity is usually beyond the means of an individual university, so we've essentially formed a buyer's club where we buy on behalf of the universities and then redistribute that capacity for their needs. Can you answer any questions about that?
Any Representative Brown.
Thank you, Dave. Long-term, does this need to be a separate line item, or could it be handled under the commission as far as
you know, I like coming every year to talk to you about this.
Yeah, and we kind of like, what are we doing here again?
But
you know?
it's your choice. I mean, this is just the way this was funded historically. If it changes, you know, it's fine.
So you don't have big heartburn if we put it under some agency?
Again, I don't know that it matters to me.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead with the highlight.
Okay, sure. So in the packet of information I delivered, I included a map. Just a quick question, did you guys get a copy of this map? You did, okay. I brought extras if you didn't. So the iLight network, again, is the state higher ed network in Indiana, connecting nearly all public and private universities, including the Ivy Tech systems. What we have accomplished in the last year or so is a complete refresh of the backbone of the network. So we're now at 100 gigabit on the entire network. If you look at your map, you'll see the blue lines indicate where the 100 gig network goes. This is driven by capacity demands from essentially IU, Purdue, Notre Dame, but the benefit is statewide in that we're able to provide faster connectivity for all of the universities, even the smaller schools that are interested in moving from a 1 gig to a 10 gig connection. That capacity is now available. It's also made it more relevant for the smaller schools who are interested in trying to apply for national funding, research funding, grant funding. As you read in my documentation, we were successful this year in helping DePaul University get a grant from the National Science Foundation. That brings the total last 2 years almost $1 million in external funding we've been able to help bring to Indiana for the smaller schools to improve their research facilities and become part of the national research network. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, just a question. So are the members of the universities, so the universities are paying into this?
Yes. Yeah.
So that membership fee is the universities paying into the iLight?
Right, and it's based on capacity. So, you know, if you're Indiana University, you're buying a lot bigger connection.
So IU is going to pay more than like Taylor
Absolutely.
or something like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. Any questions? Taylor University, sorry. Any other questions?
I do have one question.
Taylor.
Does this help the communities in the areas? Like, when I look at DePaul University and Greencastle, I didn't go there, but I know a lot of our students do. Does this help the Greencastle area in their need for infrastructure? And
so iLight is not able to help connect directly to community networks. We're a higher ed network only. So what I'd like to think is that we help the communities that are around these schools, because DePaul, you know, they've gotten more money from a national organization. They hire additional faculty. Faculty bring additional students. Students bring their families and their dogs.
Well, what
and
I'm
things like
thinking
that.
about is the lack of connectivity in those local communities where these universities are located.
ILITE is not allowed to connect
Okay,
community networks.
all right.
One other question
Yes,
is,
sir.
is like IU Health, I thought one time IU Health was part of this.
Absolutely not.
They're not?
No.
Okay,
State statute forbids me from connecting any healthcare organization
okay.
or community net-based networks.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Senator Brown, I'm sorry.
So even though, I mean, as we're expanding, for example, like up here, we have a medical school.
we did.
So when you say you're not allowed to, you mean the hospital system or?
Hospitals, commercial organizations, I'm not allowed to. So State Medical Education Center is the one in Vincennes we're building. The one, in other parts of the state, we can connect those.
You do connect those?
Absolutely.
All right, any other questions? Thank you. Next is the Medicaid state plan amendment.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Chris Fletcher, and I'm here on behalf of Interim Indiana Medicaid Director Allison Taylor, presenting 3 state plan amendments. So, the first one is nursing facility nurse consultants. This is basically just a reclassification of nursing facility nurse consultants from the administrative component to the indirect care component. It will help us align with Indiana Administrative Code. And once your approval, we will submit to CMS and change our state plan.
All right.
The second one is regarding genetic counselor reimbursement. This is essentially allowing genetic counselors to separately enroll, and allow them to seek reimbursement outside of a traditional physician fee schedule or under the supervision directly of a physician.
Any questions, Senator Brown?
Yes, I had a couple questions. So you talk about 3 new billing codes. So right now, are these genetic counselors, what is their licensing and background?
Yep.
Are they currently, like some other health providers, required to work under the control of a physician? Correct. And is this going to remove them so they can bill independently?
Yes, this will allow them to bill independently. Today, what they do is they will bill under the supervision of a physician. And last federal fiscal year, I think we billed about $9,000 in expenditures. They have, some of them may be physicians, some of them may not be physicians, but they have a certain level of specialty training
and
that allows them. Basically, there's a certification process, I believe. I can get you more information on that if you'd like.
Are they even help?
We had legislation specifically around the area of genetic counseling. I don't know if they went down the licensure path. But
They did.
according to LSA, they did?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, according to LSA, certification and licensure are legally the same, and maybe you would understand that better, but you talked to Casey Klein related to do they need to be certified or licensed, and it really legally has the same emphasis from a state standpoint, and we went through this a few years ago, doing this for genetic counselors.
Okay,
That
I guess
helps.
that does. I appreciate that. I guess my concern is just when we start to remove them from under the auspices, and then it's personally a concern to be able to start filling in. So that's kind of where my question is. Thank you.
And the final one is regarding non-emergency medical transportation broker. Essentially, these are services that we provide today. The difference is that today these are all individually enrolled, and this structure will place them under a broker. It also does add the inclusion of lodging and food, which is a federal requirement, and that is where you see the fiscal impact.
Any questions? Senator Talley.
Sorry.
I don't understand what this is at all. What kind of non-emergency medical transport do you provide?
So basically, we have members that live all over the state, but they may have specialty care needs that they may live in Northwest Indiana, but they may need to seek care at Riley due to a specialty cause. And they may be, again, Riley child, so they are going to need to be transported from your area or any other part to Riley. Because they're a child, their parent will be required or guardian will be required to go with them, and that may require them to spend the night. Therefore, we basically are going to cover their transportation needs as well as their lodging and any food needs.
And so now you're going to do this through a broker? What does that mean?
So today, basically what happens is that individual essentially has to find their own transportation provider, Medicaid licensed transportation provider, to get from where they are to where they need to be. This essentially will have a statewide broker that they can reach out to, and then that broker will directly contact with the individual providers to make sure that that member can get to and from where they need to be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Senator Brown.
So this is like, can we do something like a medical Uber instead of employing a middleman?
I guess my question would be, are they a licensed Medicaid transportation provider? I mean, they're essentially going to have to be part of our provider network, and
To be reimbursed.
Correct.
Now, I know they used to have prior approval, so the provider would have to get prior approval to transport the patient for payment. So if they go through a broker now, do I assume that they no longer have to have prior approval? Because if the broker puts the transportation together, then the assumption would be that it's approved, right?
I believe so. I can verify that for you as to where and if and when prior authorization is needed in that process.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. No other questions? All right, thank you. Next, item number 4, enterprise zones. Amy Levander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Amy Levander, and I'm here on behalf of the Association of Indiana Enterprise Zones. The two renewal applications that you have represent the final 5-year designations for both the LaPorte and Vincennes enterprise zones. Both enterprise zones receive the majority of their funding through incentives businesses receive through a local property tax investment deduction. And certainly with the elimination of the 2 state incentives at the end of this calendar year, there will only be 1 state credit left in the program. Both zones receive strong local support from the municipalities in which they are located. And the final 5-year designation renewal application you have is consistent with discussions we've held with the legislature, whereby the final enterprise zones will expire in 2022. Today I'm joined by Mike Riley, who's the president of the LaPorte Enterprise Zone and also vice president of Horizon Bank, and Mary Jane Thomas, and then Dan Ravelette of the Vincennes Zone, should you have any specific questions. And Representative Jim Pressel asked for me to convey to you his strong support for the LaPorte Enterprise Zone, but due to a previous commitment was unable to be here in person today. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Brown.
Thank you. And in the LaPorte application at least, it talks about the 1,000, roughly 1,100 jobs that were created. And I was just curious if LaPorte Enterprise Zone kept track of the jobs that were lost in that 7-year period as well. Because I see in your increased opportunities, you're anticipating if your space center, et cetera, that you could have 1,000 jobs.
I missed the last part of the question, I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead, just answer, if you can just, the first part. The number of jobs lost in the last 7 years?
Go ahead.
Are you asking for net new jobs created or?
No,
number of
you
jobs
have
in
the
the
number
area
of,
that
no,
have
you don't
been
have a
lost?
net. You have the number of jobs created in 1,110 in the last 7 years. Did you also keep track of the jobs that have been lost?
I don't have the number on the jobs that actually been lost in the last 7 years, no.
Does,
I have an estimate for you, if that would be acceptable. It's probably about 900 and some over that time period.
so you have a net of about 300?
Correct.
Okay.
So we're
And-
staying stable, is what I'm saying.
And then your, in your increased employment opportunities in your materials, the 1,000 and the 800 you talk about in these two areas, that's anticipated, that's best case scenario. That's not what you have a commitment to, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Correct,
All right,
yes.
thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that I'm interested in is, from a marketing standpoint and from economic development, when I worked in this area, we always had the benefit of the enterprise zone, and I remember when we had that thing called the inventory tax. You guys remember that thing? We would always promote the fact that the enterprise zone, you can get the exemption from that. What other state incentives, at least until 2022, can you market right now?
Well, I think, as Amy mentioned, the investment deduction is the main driver in terms of incentives for the businesses to take at this point. And I think we, in the LaPorte Enterprise Zone, are actually a pretty good example of somebody that's utilized that very well. It's been marketed very well, and the investment has brought us great returns to be able to put back into our market, and that's part of the reason why we're really pushing for the 5-year extension.
So this would go through 2027, right?
22.
Oh, you would go from now, so
Yes.
from now to 2022.
Correct.
I would assume if you had any investment in the last couple of years, you couldn't commit past 2017 then, right?
No, anything we get after this year, or we can't get anything after this year.
Okay, so if you've got projects that are in the hopper right now, and you get this, how would the enterprise zone designation, in regards to the capital investment, do they get a deduction? Do they get a zero interest loan? What is it?
And Mary Jane may be able to, but it's phased over a 10-year period, so.
I can answer.
Okay, go ahead.
So the way it works right now is a business that makes an investment would be eligible to receive a deduction on the increased assessed value of the improvements made to the property under statutory guidelines. And so that does not include certain real property. There are limitations and specifications, which I don't have with me, but I can get to you. So then that is taken over a 10-year period. And so if a business made an investment today, it would, over a schedule of 10 years, they would still be eligible to receive that credit that was awarded to them while the enterprise zone was in place. Now, going forward, to Mike's point, in 2018, obviously, if the enterprise zone isn't there, they would not be able to utilize that as an economic development incentive. But for those businesses who have already been awarded the deduction under the current statute, they would see that schedule expire based on the year that they were initially awarded the deduction.
Okay, so it's a deduction on the equipment, right?
It can be real property,
Certain-
equipment,
okay.
certain statutorily required investments like that. Generally, yes, capital investments into your property. And so I say that with just a little hesitation because the enterprise zone statute, for instance, does not allow for certain logistics or IT
Right.
equipment, but it does on real property and other personal property investments. So it's a little different than the abatement statutes that are out there and a little more limiting in terms of what are allowable investment activities.
Okay, so the actual phase out of our enterprise zone program finishes this year. So anyone who wants to use that as economic development tool going forward would have to come in front of this board, this committee, to get the ability to utilize it going forward.
So what happens under statute today is an enterprise zone was initially designated for a 10-year period, and then they are eligible for 2 additional 5-year extensions. And the only two left and allowable under statute for a 5-year extension are LaPorte and Vincennes. And so that's why we're here today for that final 5-year designation for these two zones.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Amy. That's what I was looking for.
Any other questions?
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
All right, are there any motions to remove any items from the agenda? Are there any motions to remove anything from the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move we
Wait,
approve
wait.
the agenda.
What? Okay, hold on.
I just want to, if I could, to make a comment and maybe make a suggestion for next committee. Is that the appropriate time to do that now?
Sure.
I'm not removing anything.
Can we do that at the very end for, I'll open up for discussion at the end. Is that
Okay, all right.
Okay. So, that means,
Proposed agenda.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any further discussion?
Okay. It has come to my attention over the past several days that Indiana has lost some federal grant money with regard to our insurance navigator programs that help people decide whether they're going to be on HIP 2.0 or whether they need to buy insurance on the exchange. And it's my understanding, and I may not be fully apprised of this, but it's my understanding that the grants have now gone through a kind of performance review by some part of CMS, and that Indiana, some places didn't lose any money, but that Indiana has lost 82% of what it was previously granted. And I am trying to find out what that means for our navigator programs, and if anybody can tell us why Indiana did so poorly on the performance review. It's my understanding that the navigator programs are run through Indiana Department of Insurance, and I just wonder if we could request that DOI get us some information maybe for the December meeting.
I believe the interim healthcare committee has the task of looking into some of this, and they have to give a report at some point. Am I correct?
They'd have to report to legislative council.
Really? Because this just came out. Is that, well, that's just. Do they still have meetings, and is this still going to be in part of their report?
I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, they were charged with.
You want to say something? Yeah.
Senator, it's my understanding that the interim health committee, one of the charges given to them by legislative council was to review any federal change that would impact health funding in Indiana and make a recommendation on, moving forward from there. So, and yes, there is another meeting that's scheduled. Senator Charbonneau purposely scheduled it as late in October as he could in order to kind of let all of this stuff kind of work through so that it could be presented, and then that committee could make a recommendation if necessary, if they knew what the feds were going to do, to legislative council and therefore to the budget committee as well.
Okay, so you think we'll get something from that in December?
Let's see what he's going to hear.
Have to ask the chairman, I guess.
And Mr. Chairman, I think Senator Talion, as the reports are due around November 1st, as we approach Organization Day, maybe if you still feel you could just jot a note to the chairman if he would be willing to accept to consider it for the December agenda, if you don't have the information that you feel is pertinent and needs to go forward.
Okay,
If
thank you.
the chairman would accept that.
And when I said chairman, I mean Chairman Charbonneau.
Right.
You might want to check with him.
All right.
Any other discussion? Representative Porter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to reiterate the concern, that's part of our livelihood in another world, and the event of navigating and signing people up is like November 1st through the December 15th. So I don't know, what can really transpire. I mean, there are a lot of dollars that have been unfortunately relinquished from our state, or we're not getting those dollars again, which would definitely impact our relationship in regards to signing people up for the state of Indiana. So I think that's very important.
Representative Gooden?
I just want to make a point here. I've made this point a couple of times before, but we talk about rural development. I'm going to change the pace here, but we're talking about rural development. We've had iLight here today and Gigapop and all those folks, and I think it's a mockery for the state of Indiana to talk about rural development and in the same term not talk about broadband expansion. We've got areas in the state of Indiana that still use dial-up internet, and if our economy and the leadership wants to continue to keep Indiana's economy in a 20th century economy by continuing to chase smokestacks, that's great and that's okay. But if we want to be serious contender for Amazon headquarters 2 or those types of new entities, then I think we probably should look at a real proposal to expand broadband internet across the entire state of Indiana, not just located within the confines of the cities or university towns. So I hope that could be a priority as you move forward, Ryan. We'll talk about that. So.
Good. Senator Taylor?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Whenever we approve these projects, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up, whenever we allocate funds and taxpayer dollars to projects across the state of Indiana, one of the things that we should be cognizant of is the Indiana Code, Indiana Administrative Code 25 IAC 5-1, which is the MWBE program that we have for minority women and veteran-owned businesses. And I won't make this redundant, but I will say this. The universities have created these vehicles to have creative financing and to get projects to market quicker and everything like this. We should have a quality program through IDOA, which we do have a program to make sure that these projects meet the goals and objectives of the state. We have a diverse state, we have diverse taxpayers, and I think Indiana, and I'm proud to be a Hoosier because of this, Indiana is one state that we have a program for minority women and veteran-owned businesses. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that we need to make sure that when projects are brought before this committee, and I don't want to bring it up every time somebody brings a project, but nobody asked the question about the participation. And I didn't do it on purpose today because I didn't want to take time to ask on every project. But we should have that as a part of the discussion when these universities especially come in front of us to talk about the renovation and all this other thing. So, Mr. Chairman, just as a suggestion, not something that you have to do, but I would think that because we have a administrative code that we created by statute that requires these universities to, and NDOT and all the other people who have contracts through IDOA, to have minority participation goals, not requirements, goals, that they at least come to us and say how they're going to meet them. So that's just something I would suggest for future meetings. It's up to you, Mr. Chairman, whether or not you do that. But, I already get in trouble for asking too many questions, and I hate to ask it on every project as they come up. So it would be more convenient if they just let us know what they're doing to meet those goals and objectives.
Question we should ask the universities, what are their goals?
Well, I don't want to ask them every time. It would be unfair and take up a lot of time, but if it was in part of their presentation, we get these paragraphs about what they're doing, but we also have a code section that says that they have to make goals to meet the goals of the state of Indiana, and none of it's in the report. If they could just provide it in the report, or at least discuss it every time they come to the podium, that would be a great thing, and I think it would take less
They're all
time.
still sitting here listening to our conversation, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Taylor. Representative Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're right, they are still sitting here listening to our conversation, but the conversations have been going on for years. And they know our concerns, some of us that are representatives here in the state of Indiana. We know the whereases. I mean, I've served on as a staffer to Department Administration. I've served on as a legislator for MBE-WBE Commission as a legislator. They know our concerns, and we've sent letters, some of us, as a caucus, a black caucus, and we gotten, some attempt at numbers that we still want to dispute. But, Mr. Chairman, they know. It's just, are we going to hold them accountable? That's the issue. If they can continue to come here and not address the issue, they will not. But until we say, thou shalt do this, that's the only way it's going to happen, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Porter. Any other discussion? All right. So it looks like tentatively the next meeting will be December 18th in Indianapolis, when we'll have the revenue forecast presentation. And with that being said, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.